Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Kaufman, and I am going to model what I'm going to ask each panelist to do. We're going to introduce ourselves in 3 minutes, and everyone's going to stick to that. And then I'm going to have a couple of rounds of questions for our incredible panelists, and then we're going to ask you to do the same. So be thinking about your questions. So I want to particularly speak to this. We're looking at social justice through a gender and Jewish lens, both. And so I would just share that my life has been looking at social justice through a gender and Jewish lens. I spent the first half of my career in Boston. You can tell from my accent that I'm a Bostonian. Working in nonprofit and government, and then came into the other world, as I called it, when I was 39 years old, to become the director of the JCRC in Boston. Did that for 20 years before coming to New York to be CEO of the National Council of Jewish Women, 130-year-old oldest Jewish women's organization. Some of you know that. So I have lived and breathed social justice. When I came into work in the Jewish community, I made a deal with the then head of the Jewish Federation in Boston, Barry Schrade, that we made a deal, we shook on it, that he would be Torah and I would be Tzedek. He would be Torah and I would be justice, and that we would go around the community, which we did, and he would say, you can't have Torah without justice, and I would say you can't have justice without Torah. And when 14 years ago I came to be CEO of NCJW, I added the gender lens to it all. So I think epitomize Jewish social justice, gender, looking at it through a gender lens. I think many of us grew up, at least I grew up at a time when being Jewish to me was equal to pursuing justice, and that you really couldn't have one without the other, and that it really was our responsibility to work on repairing the world. And as one of my mentors, the late great Leonard Fine, and some of you knew Leonard Fine, used to say, if we write an invitation to the next generation that we want you to join the Jewish community because we need to survive, I don't think it's going to be a letter that is going to be responded to by most people. We need to be surviving for something. And so my feeling is, as Jews, we are intentionally responsible for being partners in the efforts to repair the world, because it's very broken. So that's kind of perspective that I'm going to bring to this. I did that in less than 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists, we're going to start out, pretty much do the same in their own words. I'm going to ask each of you to open, and they will introduce themselves as they do this, so I'm not even going to take the time to do that. These are all, I just should say, part of cohort 6, part of Illuminate. We're very excited. I've known most of them for a very long time. I met Shoshana yesterday, and I'm thrilled to meet her. And we're going to ask you to just quickly introduce yourself in 3 minutes, yourself and your organization. And then we'll go from there into more depth about what we want to talk about. So, Daphne?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Daphne Lazar Price. I'm the executive director of JOFA, the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance. I came to the world of, so I just want to start by saying that I was actually raised in an Israeli household where it was just part of our DNA. We spoke Hebrew, our foods were Jewish, we are Israeli. We were not observant until I was 9 or 10 years old, and then we became Orthodox overnight through Chabad. And if you know anybody who's been through that, then you understand that it's literally overnight. But in the Orthodox community, we saw everything through a chesed lens rather than a social justice lens. It wasn't until I took a job on a lark at the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism in 1999, where I stayed for 17 years, where I thought I was going in for a year, and then I say that I both drank the Kool-Aid and had Stockholm syndrome, and Stockholm. If any of you heard me say this last night, I apologize for repeating again, but the joke was that I was Reformed by day and Orthodox by night, where everybody said that it would be more fun the other way around. And so that was my entrance. That was my entrance into social justice work. But my earliest experience of where I felt exclusion as as a girl was when I was 6 years old. If any of you grew up in Toronto, I went to Associated Hebrew Day School, which was a community school. It was not an Orthodox school. The student population was not Orthodox. And our first grade teacher said, we're going to have a Siddur party. We're going to do a play. Who's going to be the rabbi? And it was like 25 kids. All the boys raised their hand, and so did I. And everybody laughed and said, girls can't be rabbis. And I got the part. So that was my first introduction. And then, from an early age, I had this like, girls can, and they can't, or they can. And as we say in Hebrew, ad kan v'lo yoter, and here and no more. And so that was like a lot of my lived experience. I'm going to fast forward to 1997 when I was a graduate student at Bernard Revel, which is Yeshiva University's Jewish History Department. And my good friend Dov Weiss said, there's this conference happening on Sunday. You should come, you like it. It sounds like something in feminism. And I was like, okay. So I go to the conference. It turns out to be the first JOFA conference where they were expecting 400 people to come. And over 1,100 people showed up. And I also say that I got there and the registration fee was $25, and I was a dirt poor grad student, and that was my whole food budget for the week. And I was like, okay, but I'm here, so I might as well. And then I walked away and found a $20 bill on the ground. So I felt like Hashem was smiling down on me, saying, this is what you should do. So JOFA was started by Blue Greenberg. How much more do I have? Quickly. Founded by Blue Greenberg. Our mission is that we advocate for women within the framework of Jewish law to create a vibrant and equitable Orthodox community. What that means is we do it through multiple ways, through training and providing tools. We are funders of Orthodox synagogues who are looking to hire Orthodox women as spiritual leaders / clergy / rabbi, whatever you want to call them, in first-time positions in partnership with Micah Philanthropies. Since October 7th, we've also had to be very outspoken about the erasure of the sexual violence that was perpetrated. And I just want to say one more line that is especially important because women are so often erased in general, and it's really lonely to be a Jewish person right now, and to be a Jewish woman right now, and to be an Orthodox Jewish woman. We just get erased from the right and from the left, and so often don't even have a seat at the table. So through JOFA, I'm able to advance our work.
Okay.
Great.
Mary.
Yes. Hi, I'm Rabbi Mary Zamore. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Rabbinic Network. We're a partner organization of the Reform Movement, a separate nonprofit mission-driven organization. We've been around for over 40 years, but let me tell you my story to WRN. When I was growing up, my family told me I could be anything I wanted to be, and I believed them. And so I worked hard. And as my passion for Judaism grew as a teenager, I decided I wanted to be a rabbi. And so I went to school and I immersed myself in seminary at HUC and in the Jewish professional world. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, the misogyny and the bias. I'd be in class or at a meeting and I would say something and no one would listen. And a few minutes later, a man would say the exact same thing, and suddenly the whole room lit up like he was brilliant. Not only that, but I came to realize that the men in my classes and around me had many more opportunities than I did. And I came to understand that, in fact, sometimes they were being paid much more money for the exact same work I was doing. And I also came to understand that there was sexual harassment and abuse all around me. And so today I am 10 years into being the executive director of WRN and very proud and very hopeful about the interventions that we've been doing and the stakeholdership we've been doing. And I just want to recognize that in this room and throughout this whole convening, there are people who are victim survivors of great harm. There are also wonderful partners, institutional and volunteer, as board members, as professionals within the reform movement, doing very hard accountability and repair work. And I'm very proud to be part of that, albeit imperfect and messy, but a historic model of repair work, to be able to name publicly the harms done, not only to people who are female identified, but people of many beautiful identities who've been harmed. And we're doing the hard work of creating repair together. I'm also very proud that we're creating interventions that help everyone. That when WRN rabbis advocate for change, structural change, we make it available to everyone so that everyone in the reform movement and beyond the entire Jewish world can benefit from our pay equity advocacy and the resources we make, from the paid family medical leave suite of resources we've created. They're all there for you and your organizations anywhere you are a stakeholder, an influencer in the Jewish world. And so I am proud that there are people in this room, including Rabbi Jill Rubin, who's a WN member, and throughout who is doing this important work, not only to support WN rabbis in their personal and professional lives, but also to better all in the Jewish world.
Wonderful. Perfect. Okay. Next we have Shoshana, and I'm going to do a disclaimer because Shoshana has an incredible story. And oh, the articles, we have articles for all of you, and we will send you the link. They should have been in the room, but they're not. I don't see them here. When Eva comes back, we'll get them about her work in Uganda. So there's a bigger story here, but she's going to take 3 minutes now and introduce herself.
Okay, I'll give you a little blurb. I have a little blurb for you guys. We'll pass it out also. So my name is Shoshana McKinney Kirya-Ziraba, and I am the founder and executive director of Tikvah Chadasha, Uganda. We are a nonprofit organization serving the Jewish community of Uganda, also called the Abayudaya Jewish community. And we are located in Naseni village, which is the heart of the Ugandan Jewish community. We're about 2 hours drive from the Kenya border. And we focus on impoverished Jewish women and disabled children. Those are the 2 most underserved communities, and two most underserved populations in our community. So our name, it's Tikvah Chadasha Uganda. It means a new hope for Uganda. And the reason why we called our organization A New Hope is because so much of the time, when I was a kid, the problems of Africa were shown as being hopeless. When I was a kid, there was this commercial. An actress named Sally Struthers would come on TV and they would show a kid with, it was nothing but skin and bones, flies on his body. And they would say, for 80 cents a day, you could sponsor this kid. And it was all about the viewer of the commercial feeling guilty, seeing this kid's pain, having pity on him, that the only thing that we could do is help this kid limp along day by day for our 80 cents that we were giving through this television commercial. And that was the view, with slight different variations of this theme. That was the view of what we could do for Africa, okay? But then my life changed. I married a Ugandan Jew. You see, okay, on a personal level, I'm Black and I'm Jewish. So that meant there was 5 guys in America that I could date. And so when a Ugandan Jew approached me, who I had met his rabbi earlier back in California, we made a shidduch, and we fell in love. And thanks to the pandemic, when my U.S. government canceled my husband's visa along with several other visa types, the only way for our family to live in the same house was for us to move to Uganda. And it wasn't just Uganda, it was a village, deep village, rural Uganda. So long story short, my life is the African version of Green Acres.
Beautiful.
Great.
Okay, Cheryl, last but certainly not least.
Right, extraordinary woman. It's such a pleasure to sit here with all of you. And I really want to also say how amazing it is to participate in the Elluminate collective. It's really meaningful to me. So I'm Cheryl Cook. I am the CEO of Avodah. We train up Jews to work on social justice in the United States and on poverty in the United States. I was raised in a really strong Jewish household. I was raised in the Midwest. I was raised I went to day school, I went to Jewish camp. And when I came, I actually moved to New York for social work school. I came here for social work school many years ago and went through social work school, and my placement was in foster care. So I was working in foster care. I was working with really hard cases. I was going into the projects, into public housing in New York City. I was meeting with people. I was hearing really hard stories about their lives. And then I was coming home. I was living, actually, I was at JTS at the time. And so I was coming home to my dorm where I had a lot of friends in rabbinical school and education school. And I would just sit and cry because it was really hard work, really hard work. And I was really clear. I wanted to help create change. I wanted to be a person who could help create change. And I also really felt a little bit stuck because this was hard work. And I just I couldn't figure out how I was going to have a path forward. When zoom forward many years later, and there's a lot of story in between that, but many, many years later, I had the opportunity to step into leadership at Avodah. And one of the things that Avodah does is that we bring young adult Jews to work on poverty and justice in our country. And so we are essentially, what I was doing when I was in foster care, when I was working in foster care, is we are bringing people after college or in this age range to work on issues like healthcare or new Americans, immigration, right? Or criminal justice, all of those kind of issues. But not only are they doing that, they're doing that living in a house of Jews. So they're living with community, and they're doing a whole educational curriculum around that. And what is really incredible about this program, which I did not found, but I have the pleasure of leading for 10 years now, is that 92% of the people who come through this program work on poverty and social justice for their lives. So Lonnie in the back.
I was just gonna clap for her.
Mindy in the front is an Avodah alum. Mindy was just telling me she works on healthcare and is chair of the board at JOFA. We think a lot about how proximity to the issues that are affecting people is the most important way to actually create change. Because once you've heard stories, you've seen what's going on in after school with low income people, or in healthcare where people don't have access to healthcare. We heard a lot about that before, or all of the different issues, you are going to be compelled to create change. So we are a network. We also have Michal in the back, who is also an alum of ours, with a program of ours that works with Jewish leaders of Jewish organizations now of how to bring in justice into their work and inclusion into their work. And so Michal is part of one of our programs that we have grown into over the last many years. So even it's amazing to sit in a room and have 3 of our alums sitting in this room today.
Say the visionary circle of Elluminate has done an unbelievable job of picking. These are 4 out of 10. You saw some others on the stage earlier. These unbelievable leaders in our community. It isn't easy. I think you had 80 applications, Roberta, if I'm not mistaken, for the 10 spots. So it's amazing. We have 3 seats in the front. If you don't need to stand, Lonnie, come on up. Now I'm happy to have you. Okay, so first of all, thank you. I'm always inspired by it. And I should have said at the beginning, I'm a senior advisor for Elluminate, and I convene a women CEOs group of all the people who have not been fortunate enough to be in Elluminate, past and present. When we first sent out the survey, we got 400 responses. So anyone who says there's not Jewish women CEOs out there are a lot of them. And it's very exciting. It's exciting to me as someone who's considered now a dean of Jewish social justice.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's possible, but that's what they do. Okay, next I wanted to do another round. This round's going to be 5 minutes. This time I'm going to start, Cheryl, with you because I want to mix it up a little bit. And we're going to ask you to describe the ways in which your work is done through both a Jewish and gender lens.
Great. I mean, there's so much to say about this, so I'm going to say it in 5 minutes or less, and then I want to talk about it. First of all, I was just saying at the table I was sitting at earlier that I led an organization. First, I want to actually start by saying honoring Nancy and Ruth, who was speaking earlier, because when I came into this work, there were very few Jewish women leaders in the Jewish community and in the justice community. And was finding representation, seeing examples of people who are leading organizations is really, really important. I had children while I was in senior leadership at a Jewish organization. I had children still, I luckily still have my children, and they're still in my household, so they're still growing up, and I had children through the pandemic. And so when I think about that question, Nancy, the first place that I actually go is to my own leadership. I lead with a gender lens because I'm very clear that we have to bring our whole selves to the workplace. I imagine many of you, maybe like me, have worked in places where you're not allowed to bring your whole self to the workplace. That if there's an issue going on at home, that is for home, and you cannot talk about it at work. And it doesn't matter the health issues going on at home, it doesn't matter anything else, that is for home. And I really believe that in order to create organizations where we want people to thrive and to stay, because retention costs us a lot of money, we actually have to lead with seeing full people in their full selves. We have to lead. And so I think a lot as a woman who has come up through working in the Jewish community my whole career about how to create an organization that actually holds the values that we hold externally, internally. There's a great Jewish kind of, there's a beautiful Jewish teaching about our insides have to match our outsides. And so I would just say that I believe very strongly, and I talk about this a lot, that we actually, our job as Jews and as Jewish leaders, men or women, but I think about this especially because I'm a woman, is to create an organization where my staff feel great. Ask any of my staff, right? I want them to say, I love working at Avodah. I am seen at Avodah. The policies care for me, whether I'm a part-time person or I just had a child or I have a sick parent, that we are creating the kinds of organizations. So that's not always what the answer is around gender lens. And there's a lot of other things I can talk about because 75% of the people who come through our programs are women, women identifying women. So I'm thinking a lot about how to invest in leaders, but I really do believe that we also have to talk about how we create organizations, especially in the not-for-profit world, that keep us in them, and that keep us motivated to do our work. So I think a lot about both of those issues as I think about justice. And last, I would just say we are working with a network, an incredible network of social justice organizations. And I brought a few, I'll pass around some of the organizations we work with, both Jewish on Jewish poverty and on social justice. And as we heard earlier, right, most often our clients are women. Our clients are women. And so really thinking about how are we investing in poverty in this country? We're investing in women. How are we investing in organizations that really care about changing, right? We're thinking on one hand about how we invest in social services so that a woman can actually, take care of her children, that she has the ability to do what she needs to do. We're also thinking about how do we create change in our society so that in the end, that is not necessary. So I think at Avodah, the teaching that we're doing is really about, there are lots of different ways of creating change in this country. Every single one of us needs to be part of that, whether it's through frontline work, whether it's through philanthropy, whether it's through any means of change, sitting on a board. Please, everybody, you're all here, you're all involved in Elluminate, pick a board, pick an issue, because I really believe that we are all change makers, and we're teaching and we're starting people out when they're very young about creating change, and we are investing in women, and I'm super proud of that.
Perfect. My goodness, that's excellent.
There you are.
And I just want to illuminate
Please illuminate
what Cheryl's saying. I just should mention that when Ruth Messenger and I were founders of the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable, when we started that back in the 2000s, and we did it as volunteers, self-organizing for several years. There were six of us talking, and only 2 women, and the others were men. And today, fast forward, I am very happy to say that there are 78, or probably more than that by now, 78 Jewish social justice organizations working in that space. So that's a huge change in
not
25
all,
years.
but mostly women leaders.
And mostly women leaders.
In
absolutely.
the mainstream Jewish community, less
Right.
women leaders,
Right.
more women working in the field, less women at the top. So you can
Yeah,
think
and
about.
I always like to remind my friend Ruth that I was 8 years in this field before she appeared on the scene. So, you know, I was very happy when she did.
Yeah.
Okay, Cheryl, thank you. Shoshana,
Yes,
please, you.
yes. Okay, so, let me just, start with the story. So, when it comes to life in rural Africa, there really is no substitute for actually being there. And when I was there, I came to learn so much more that I had no idea. So my husband is so amazing. He built our house, and unlike most of the people in our village, our house has indoor plumbing. But one day we needed to shut off the water because the plumber needed to make some repairs. So, okay, what are we gonna do? We need water. Okay, so we're gonna take these big yellow jerry cans down to the village water pump. Okay, how hard could it be? Because there's so many women who have to do that every day. It's bringing water home is considered women's work. So it was my turn. Well, we walk the 500 yards to the water pump the water. If you've ever done manual water pump, you know it takes some time to get started. Finally, the water starts flowing. Fill up our jugs, and then it's time to carry it home. It was time to carry it home? No, it was time to drag it home. Okay? So I'm pushing it along and it's scraping on the bottom. I'm leaning over, pushing it. Then that arm gets tired and I'm leaning over, pushing it on this side, and it's scraping. Every pebble was like a mountain on the way. Halfway home, and I wanted to quit. But I said, you know what? I can't quit. There's people counting on me to bring this water home. Okay. Finally got home. And I said to myself, how are these women doing this every single day? Every single day. Well, I knew that women couldn't, many women couldn't, have running water in their houses. Well, what could they do? Well, couldn't they collect rainwater? That makes sense. Uganda is a country where it rains all the time. So how come there wasn't more women getting rainwater? And we said, oh, okay, well, it costs about $300 to install rainwater collection troughs, pipes, water tank, and the labor to do it. It costs about $300. But yet, a lot of the families in our community are earning $250 a month. The equivalent, US dollar equivalent to $250. And so, because adding rainwater collection is something that is seen as something that benefits mainly the woman, these families aren't going to invest that kind of money in something that's considered a convenience for the woman. And so, going through daily life in the village and seeing all these little ways that women were strategically not invested in, just gave me such clarity on what we need to do and that we need to focus on women. So when it comes to what we do as an organization, we're very much guided by our Jewish values. The Rambam taught us that the highest form of tzedakah is to give another person a livelihood. And when it comes to our projects with women, one of the things that we love doing is creating home-based chicken farms for women. We bring them to our chicken farm at home. We train them. We give all the supplies, the equipment. We refurbish their spaces, add solar panels and rainwater collection, to the chicken farms at home, and they're able to earn an income from home with far less work. They're able to use some of the excess water for, for other things that they need at home. Mind you, these are women who also have to hand wash their family's laundry. Okay, so having this water at home is a lifeline. And so, okay, thank you. So I just want to leave you with the fact that, the Jewish lens and the gender lens, they're intertwined for us in an organization. And it's very meaningful to share this with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shoshana. Thank you. Mary.
So before I talked about my own experience, but I've been a rabbi for 27 years. And so you may be thinking, well, that's understandable. That was 27 years ago that she experienced that. And maybe some of the things I said even resonated for you and your experience of navigating the world. Well, today there are over 900 women who are ordained in the Reform movement across the 4 campuses from Jerusalem to New York to Cincinnati to LA. And when I look at the broader picture of women ordained in the mainstream seminaries of America, that I would actually, beyond, I would say there's not even 1,500 women who've been ordained as rabbis. And just, we Jews are a small nation, right? A small club, but still that's a very small percentage. And so, when I speak to younger rabbis, our WN members, I am not surprised to learn that unfortunately they are battling almost the same fights. The women who founded my organization over 40 years ago, that they were fighting, and the reason why they organically clung to each other so that they could persevere and ultimately flourish. And today, when you look across the Jewish world, especially from this vantage point here on 59th Street and Lexington, we know that there are many fantastic success stories. And I'm very proud of that. Things have changed. And some of the issues that I have discussed have gotten better because of our advocacy. And I'm also extraordinarily proud of that. And so the problem is, there's also sadness in that we're still battling the same fights. And there's an irony in being a rabbi, because people assume that you have power, and you do in some ways. Whether you yourself are a religious person or affiliate with the synagogue, rabbis hold a certain position in the Jewish community. But at the same time, the structure of our community and the greater world undermines that power and position all the time. And if we want healthy Jewish communities, we need to have healthy leaders, and we have to have healthy participants. They have to be safe communities for everyone. They have to be equitable communities for everyone. And at a moment like this in history, yes, we have to focus on the very urgent issues in front of us, but we also have to focus on the bones of our community, on the foundation of our community, and to ask, are we living up to our Jewish values? And unfortunately, too often the answer is no, we are not. We're getting closer some days, and some days we're taking a big step back. And we are be able to collect data on salaries of the professionals in the reform movement. And there's a sadness. I have a sadness that we're not able to do that for all employees. We haven't figured out a way to do that. But we know that those markers are a reflection of the whole picture, for sure. And that when we follow gender data, we know that that affects people of all beautiful identities, no matter who they are in our Jewish community. So we use those as measuring sticks, and the interventions are for everyone. And so the work we've done, I'm proud to say, is truly historic. That the accountability and repair work that we're doing in the reform movement has certainly helped everyone in the Jewish community and beyond. When certain headlines, like from the Church of England, came out last week, I know that we've influenced that. We've been part of the greater story to say that no one is above ethics, morality, and the law. That everyone has to be safe in our communities. That people should be paid equally. That there should be equal opportunity for everyone. that everybody's history should be recorded as part of our Jewish story. And that everyone deserves to be supported at their different seasons of life through paid medical and family leave. That we have to be those whole people that Cheryl referred to when we come to the Jewish community. And so we may be a very niche organization in terms of who our members are, but our reach is great because we are rabbis. That every one of our members are not only leaders of, whether it's a synagogue, a hillel, a hospice, hospital, schools, so many iterations of what the rabbinate is, and therefore not only the rabbinate, but the cantorate, Jewish professionals, we reflect all of that whole beautiful merism of everything we are in the Jewish community, that the communities get better because of it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And everyone's so well behaved, huh? Time it. Anyway, Daphne.
So many tough acts to follow there. Okay, so I started to say that JOFA was founded through a conference. And so historically, JOFA has been like the great convener of Orthodox feminists. And I want to spend a moment on that term because people often say, how can you be Orthodox and be feminist? And how can you be feminist and be Orthodox? And the answer is, you just can. That's it. It might sound weird. What was the exercise that Naomi did this morning, right? Hold your hands like this, now switch it. Does it feel weird? Yeah, but does it hurt you? No. So great. So, but there are people in the Orthodox community who, in particular, the male folk who are in charge, who, you know, historically have not been so pleased with our work. But I want to talk about the work that we actually do. So I mentioned that we fund synagogues. The women who we fund are called Devorah Scholars, and we've now funded, I want to say, 15 congregations across North America, the United States. I don't think we funded anybody in Canada yet. And this is literally changing the facts on the ground in synagogues across the country. What it's also doing is it's also encouraging other synagogues to think about what models of leadership would look like to have women in senior leadership roles. I don't mean youth directors or program directors or executive directors, but somebody who is part of her job to speak from the pulpit at the end of services or in the middle of services or whatever. So that is one bucket of our work. And I really like what Moran said before, where she said, we don't just empower women, we put women in power. So other ways that we do that is we provide tools and resources. Probably our most popular tool is our app, where we have a woman's voice, Rabbi Bracha Jaffe, who teaches people how to read Megillah, which is, you know, Purim happens once a year. It's a story about Esther, and it is an obligation for everybody who subscribes to the ideology to hear and or to read. And so there are communities and households across the world that use this app in order to teach themselves, women in particular, how to lead Megillah reading. And then we also have like a how-to manual to make sure that you've checked all the check boxes. And there are other similar kinds of resources. We've also provided kind of cohort education. So for a few years we did cohort education for Jewish day educators, where if you are a parent who is investing in your child's day school education, in particular Orthodox education, and you have a son and you have a daughter, they're each coming home with very different experiences, both because of the curriculum and because of the dynamics between student and teacher. Boys in general have rabbis, rebbes teaching them Talmud, where girls generally don't, or they do have the rabbis teaching, but the gender dynamic is very different. And so what we want to see is more women teaching Talmud. What we also want to see is more girls learning Talmud. And so we want to see a broader engagement on that. I want to say, when I took the job on February 1st, 2019. And for those of you who live in New York may remember that on January 30th, 2019, New York State passed its Reproductive Health Act, which was the most comprehensive abortion access legislation to come out of a state legislator. Since then, I think New Jersey and Illinois and California have also, and as we've heard, it's now been enshrined in other state constitutions in this election. But in 2019, that happened on January 30th, and almost overnight, as though they had the memo slipped under the door, the Rabbinical Council of America, the Uganda Israel of America, and the National Council of Young Israel all came out with these horrific statements, really like demonizing women who needed or who may need abortion access care, and we were horrified. I've not yet taken the job. And so the first thing that we did was that before I even became an official JOFA executive director, was that we drafted a statement, basically assuring women that this was, or people in general, that this was, that abortion is halachically okay, that women should be entitled to the legal care that they deserve, or the care that they deserve, and without any, now I'm blanking on the words, but without any, the word was shame. But what we were trying to do was take the shame out of abortion, where these male-led rabbinic organizations were just causing women to feel shame, and also like creating an environment where women would never think to ask their rabbis, where even if they weren't asking for halachic permission, they would certainly not go to them for pastoral guidance either. So that was one thing. And we had to reiterate our position after the Dobbs decision was delivered. I feel like there's one thing I wanted to say, but it's okay. It's time. Great.
Wow. That's. I have a little time for your questions. I have more questions, but before I ask my questions, anyone question, and please just introduce yourself, and you can address it to one person, address it to all of them, however you want to do it. Yes, go ahead, Valerie.
This is going to be maybe controversial, but I'm associated with the Jewish Federation in Baltimore, and I run the Jewish Women's Giving Foundation. We are a giving circle of about 120 women. We make grants specifically to organizations that support women and girls. And as part of our education program, we just had, and because abortion was just enshrined in the Maryland Constitution.
Yep. Yes. Question one.
Yeah. So question one.
Yep.
Yes. So we had a panel come, the director of development from Planned Parenthood of Maryland. We had a OBGYN who counseled Planned Parenthood, and then we had a rabbi. Now, she was a conservative rabbi, and she's educating us on the Jewish perspective around abortion. And what she said was that in the Torah, a life is considered once the baby's head is out. Mm-hmm. So why would a group of Orthodox rabbis contest?
I'm so glad you asked that.
I'm afraid that I asked that, but I really want to know.
No, I'm so glad you asked that. I'm gonna give an answer that's just blunt. And it, first of all, let me say, I'm just going to give the blunt answer, and that has to do with unholy political alliances with the evangelicals. And I think in the name of finding support for Israel, I think that if you, in my estimation, that's really what it comes down to, because otherwise they have no business in weighing in on this issue, and certainly not in a negative way, that way. That's in a nutshell.
Okay.
Wow. Yes, go ahead, Mel.
I have a.
Say who you are.
Marilyn Typet, a longtime member. And
Of Illuminate.
from the Jewish Women's Foundation.
Yes.
It's for Shoshana. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
There was a woman who was a gynecologist, and her husband was an electronic guy, and he was went to Kenya, and the rooms for the marriage of a birth were not lit, and she raised some money, and we gave $25,000 before, and she went to the UN later in the day, and she got $25,000 to make electrified birth rooms in Kenya.
Question is.
It was a whole thing about suitcases. But anyway, and on the other hand, you did the thing about the water. We did have someone who was a member of this group. She lived in Africa, and I have no idea where, and her mother was part of the group, and we had all these things. And you went for the women, and this woman went, the girls couldn't go to school because they had to go get the water.
Yes.
Yeah, did you have a question?
Well, I can talk about, I can talk about some of the issues that she's bringing up, which are very important for us to get into. So like 3 villages over, there is the village is called Petete, And there is a small hospital, small hospital, and they have a maternity ward. And that maternity ward does not have a surgery suite. They do not have the equipment to do cesarean if they need it. They do not have enough laboratory equipment to test the pregnant mothers correctly, with the test that any woman here in America would get. And, you know, and that I would love if we would be supported in such a way that we could actively do something. You know, when it comes to making concrete change and really efficient use of resources, you know, the US dollar goes so far in Uganda. And if we could do that, we could really save women's lives. We could really save women's lives. And you know, that is such an important issue that you brought up. And it's really a life or death.
It's not a joke, but look at, explain about the suitcases. Oh, it's not important. It's not a question.
Shoshana, I don't think everyone knows about the Uganda Jewish community. Maybe you could just say a minute.
Sure. Like, so they're Jews just like you, but they're also Ugandans. So,
The ancient, long, thousands of years.
so the history of the Jewish community in Uganda is a little bit different from most other Jewish communities. So the Jewish community of Uganda has no direct lineage from ancient Israel. It's a community that consisting of the descendants of people who converted to Judaism several generations ago. So there've been 6 generations of Jews in Uganda. And so when you hear about conversion ceremonies taking place in the community, these are people who've been living their whole lives as Jews and whose grandparents have been living as Jews. So it's not conversion in the same way. It's more like the conversion ceremonies of the new Ethiopian immigrants to Israel. It's more like that. Okay, it's not real conversion. It's not conversion in the way that my parents, for example, converted to Judaism. And so the Jewish life in Uganda, it has a lot of similarities, but it also has some differences. Like one of the things that's the same is my wedding had a chuppah. One of the things that's different is that it was made out of sugarcane poles. At the end of the wedding, we ate our chuppah. Okay, you know, just like many of you, we built a sukkah at home, but our sukkah is the roof of the sukkah is covered in banana leaves, okay, and palm trees. You know, we are also going to get ready to light the menorah when I finally go back home to Uganda. We're going to light the menorah, but you know, with us, instead of being snow on the ground, it's going to be blazing hot because we're at the equator and it's our hot season. So we're, you know, we have so much in common when it comes to values, traditions, beliefs, a commitment to Hebrew culture, solidarity as a nation. But there's also things that are different. And I really invite all of you to come learn about the community. And if you want to take the next step to even visit us.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Go ahead, Felisa, introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, my name is Felisa Wisdom from New York Jewish Agenda. This is my esteemed board chair, in fact, Nancy Kaufman, another board member, Karen Gershon in the room. I have a question about sort of generational differences in leading through a gender lens. I grew up in the reform movement. I learned to be a feminist in the reform movement. I lobbied on abortion in 2002 when we never thought that this would ever be on the table again, or we find ourselves where we are. Maybe it's mostly a question for Cheryl, but for anyone, how are you finding this kind of related to what I just said about like things have gone backwards. Young people did not know a world like the one that came before us, and now we're sort of re-entering that kind of world. Like, how is that showing up in your organizations? And yeah, you got it.
How many of you went to a march in the last 10 years? A march, right? Any march? Okay. How many of you are tired? Right. I love that not everyone's tired. That's so great. What is incredible about the younger generation, I work with people in, from their 20s and 30s all the way to, to any leaders in the Jewish community. But what is incredible about the young people coming into social change work and into justice work and into anti-poverty work is they have energy. They are excited. I saw Sucks the other night. I don't know how So right, there was Carrie Chapman, right, right, and there's Alice Paul. I loved it because it really was like, if you take that apart, right, there's lots of different ways to create change. Both of them actually played off each other to create change. If you saw the play, if you didn't, go see it. They just use different ways of creating change. And one of the things that helps me every day is I was just in Chicago this week. I was in Chicago last weekend, and I met with 14 people who are in the Service Corps right now. They are working with Jewish and non-Jewish organizations working on the front lines of issues. And to the person, they told me, I am so excited to be in a program right now where I get to actually learn and create change. And I can't wait I want to keep doing it. I want to keep doing it. So I would say one is there are some differences. There are definitely differences, as there were when I was 23, right? I sometimes looked at my community and with love and accountability, they do the same thing. And I say to them all the time, like, you bring a lens, and together, right? I bring a lot of experience, a lot of us bring experience. It is actually together that we're building something, and that they both need to look to those of us who have been in the work a long time to learn from us. And we bring in, Edith or Ruth, there are all the amazing women who have been, doing this work before, and that they have something to say, and they deserve a place at the table, and they have something to say. I would say we have had some tension, and I do want to name this sometimes, around how we hold Israel. We are a diverse, Avodah brings in people with lots of different backgrounds and lots of different thinking. And Israel has been a tension, and I imagine any of you who may have children or grandchildren, or right, you may be sitting with that too. And we hold everyone in the community. We say there is a space for you, and we actually have space, and we can have hard conversations. I believe that in my soul, that pushing people out of a community is not the way to do this, not the way. But instead, we can hold each other, look each other in the eyes, and we can have hard conversations, and we can ask. And the question is not political rhetoric. Actually, it's actually looking people in the eyes and saying, tell me about your experience, and what's your experience with this issue, and what's your background. And when we start telling stories about who we are and why we are where we are, it's actually deep conversation. One of our values is a machloket. It's like respectful disagreement, I would say. And the other is elu ve'elu, like this and this, that we can hold complexity. And so one of the things we model for young people, and we actually ask them to bring into the room, is being able to hold complexity. I hope we all can. I think when we do this kind of work, right, I was listening to a lot of complexity this morning in terms of holding a room where there was not an assumption that maybe everyone voted the same way even, or everyone, right? There was a lot of complexity, and we can hold complexity. And so that's what we're talking to with the people we work with, and that's also what we're asking of them. And so it's only through being in these hard conversations that we're able to move. And I think it's a really important question to keep pushing on, making sure we're in relationship with people of other generations, making sure that we're not in our own bubbles in any way, but especially generationally, because there's so much, we can bring so much together. So I'm going to keep holding up Alice Paul and Carrie Chapman chat.
Mary, weigh in
I
and
just
then
want to,
Roberta.
I want to respond very fast, and I want to
Yes.
say that I believe that women hold complexities much differently and much better than men do.
Yeah, Mary.
Well, I want to answer the question too, because it's very relevant to WRN. Women have, there's only been a path for women to the rabbinate in a public standard way for 52 years. And WRN has been, and it wasn't like we suddenly had a whole cohort in 1972. There was one singular woman, Rabbi Sally Priesand. So by the late 70s, my members were organically creating hubs of support for one another. And later those hubs joined together in 1980 to be my organization. So we are in the first time in my organization's history having multi-generational organization that goes all the way from our oldest members, who by the way is not Rabbi Sally Priesand, but second career rabbis, to our youngest rabbinical students. And that's a lot to hold for an organization that did not start off as multi-generational. But it's also super exciting. It's complex, as Cheryl just described, but it is also very exciting. And, our youngest board members pushed us, and I'm very grateful for it, for us to expand our membership definition to be female identified, non-binary, gender fluid. And that model has now been replicated for the Women of Reform Judaism, which is sisterhood in the Reform movement. And they've used all of our language, and they've now codified that as well. And we've also been a model to other organizations. We're very proud of that. When other members of the Reform movement start to throw up their hands and say there are too many women in leadership, and there are too many women in our seminary. One of the things that now because I've been educated by Kesher Edith, shout out to you, to be able to say to them, and by our youngest members, I've been educated to be able to say, you know what, you need to get beyond binary, and you need to be looking at the complexity of gender, the way the next generation looks at it. So please don't look at the seminary and make assumptions about anybody's gender. And so that is part of our story too. And honestly, through this Me Too reckoning, through this accountability and repair, we too were looking at stuff. And I was actually looking not at the musical, but at the history of suffrage, that the balance between the fiery, literally burning, in the streets, the anger, versus the diplomatic path, or as we like to say it, the Vashtis versus the Esthers. and we've had to hold that too. And there are people in my organization for whom we have not been vocal enough. I know there are leaders in the Reform movement who would go like, what? And maybe some of you. But we've had to hold both very carefully during this time, and with love, also love and respect, and to try all of it. And there's certainly people who think, we should have never said anything publicly, that was disloyal. And there are people who thought we weren't loud enough. And so we've had to hold all of that.
I'm gonna, Mira, quick question, and then I want to ask a closing.
So I'm just gonna make an appeal because it's like now or never.
Pearl, can you get the door in the back? Just
So I'm Rabbi Mira Rivera. I was ordained by the conservative movement. And in the last couple of years, there have been, allegations of sexual impropriety or, power, just power, just games and all that. And I just want to make an appeal person to person. There have been, and there will be more, maybe a trickle. For us, it's like a deluge, but a trickle of Jews of color who will be applying to the seminary and have. And the inequity of the way they've been treated racially, I just want to make sure that please think of them and know that this is not a problem that disappears, but it's one of the problems that will just go under the table immediately, really after 2020 and the streets of, with Black Lives Matter, all that kind of, pricked our interest into say their names. That interest has gone out the window, especially after October 7, we're often seen as anti-Zionists immediately, and we're not all anti-Zionists. I'm here, right? And so I'm gonna make an appeal. Know that this will continue, and please look out for them. That's all.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
just want to put out there, this Jew of color is a staunch Zionist, maybe more Zionist than some of you. One of those people would say, like the settlement kind of Zionist. And my mother's an Israeli citizen, and we have a wonderful Jewish woman of color who is a proud Israeli, Ethiopian Israeli also.
Okay, because we're gonna have to close this down. Mary, one comment, and they're gonna ask for a closing.
Yes.
I'm gonna do-
So thank you, and thank you for raising that. I do want to point out that in the investigations, the third-party independent investigations of the reform movement, there were 3 separate investigations in the end. 2 were comprehensive investigations from HUC and from the URJ, so from our congregational arm and from our seminary. And we insisted that it be broad, It wasn't just about gender. And so that was part of the documentation, exactly what you've described. And thank you again for your work in the space. And it's very important to WRN that when we do the interventions, the design of those, that they, again, are for everyone. So it's not that we're looking for pay equity for just for me, but for everyone in the movement.
Right.
So again,
Thank you.
thank you for your
All right,
advice and your work.
closing, I'm gonna start with Daphne, and I'm gonna ask you, what gives you hope right now?
What gives me hope? We talked about generational differences. I want to say that the next generation gives me hope. There are more women learning Torah today than historically probably ever at every level. I'll also just say I will be a rabbi come June 16th, where I'll be great hope. I also just I'm really sorry because I flubbed my words before, and I just want to read the statement just so you understand the work that went into the nuance about our position on abortion. And that is that as a matter of principle, JOFA supports every woman's legal right to make decisions about and have control over her own body without the involvement of the government or any other entity. And every woman should have the right to make decisions about, to make her own decisions about religious and medical matters, including abortion, free from stigma and while retaining human dignity.
Right. Thank you.
I never thought I would live to see the accountability and repair work that we were witnessing in our own age. I really didn't. I never thought I would see it. And I thought if I would see it, it would just be a drop against what really needed to be done. And again, there are victim survivors for whom that there will never be true repair. Their lives have been harmed in awful ways. But even within the imperfect, messy work that we've all done together in partnership, it is historic and unprecedented in any other religion, the way it's happened. And so when I look around the Jewish community and look at these phenomenal leaders, you in this room, I have a lot of hope that we will continue to make amazing strides forward, even during really hard times.
I thank you, and I should mention that one of my other hats, I have a lot of different keep-up, is senior advisor at the Safety, Respect, Equity Network, of which Mary has been a real hero in this work. She's been really leading.
Thank you.
Incredible. Shoshana, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? The thing that gives me hope is the change that I can see in my work in real time. We can find a woman that we're able to create a chicken farm for. Within 6 weeks, she has an income stream. The next month after that, she's able to send her kids to school. Kids that were previously not going to school in school. Okay? Well, the work that we are doing is changing lives right in front of our faces. And it's not a theoretical thing, it's not a vibes thing, it's results. It's results. And that's what gives me so much hope. And it's become addicting. I need more.
And the article that I mentioned is now in the back. It appears.
Yes,
magically.
please take it
Thank
so
you.
that you can understand what we're going through.
Cheryl,
Sure.
mass, but certainly not least.
Sure. I mean, my mom went to law school in the 60s. She was one of 3 women in her law school. She was told she was taking a man's spot. And I lead a Jewish organization. And I work with young adults who want to work and want to create change and are creating partnerships in the Jewish and the non-Jewish world. And so I want to say, like, that journey that I see change that has happened, that reminds me that change happens. It happens sometimes slowly, sometimes we take steps back, but I look at my mom all the time and thinking about what she did and thinking about what I can do and thinking about what the people who are coming after me can do really, really gives me hope. And the other thing is that partnerships with non-Jewish organizations really matter, especially right now with rising anti-Semitism. And the other thing that gives me hope is being in deep relationship with organizations working on issues in the progressive community where there's actually Jews and non-Jews talking about what's going on. I see so much possibility, even in really hard times. So those things give me hope.
And what gives me hope